presidents, office bearers, all the managing committee members of all the 6 organizing associations, my professional brothers and sisters. Friends, before I start this topic, I have made certain assumptions in my mind about the controversial issues in claiming ITC. The first one is, all of you present over here, either mostly in the capacity of GST consultants, those who are representing their clients, as well as those who are the registered persons under GST. All of you are, this is the first assumption, are caring much and want to render effective service to all your genuine recipients. Why I am saying this? Most of the time what happens when the issue of cross-check comes, it is being equated by the department with non-genuine transactions. So here today, we are not at all going to discuss about the non-genuine input transactions. That's why I made this assumption. And second one, all of us as are more concerned to protect our genuine recipients. The second assumption, whatever I have made is this, that because of section 16(2)(c), if any of the recipients is affected, especially while dealing with rules like Rule 36(4), all of us are prepared to agitate, of course, in a legal manner, against these draconian rules. And on this background, on these 2 basic assumptions, I am moving further. As you have seen the first slide over here, this topic can be divided mainly in 4 parts according to me. A, documents required. B, furnishing of returns, that is a must. Without that, you cannot claim the ITC. C, last date after which it cannot be claimed. For example, whatever is the due date for September return, etc., you are aware of it. And D, payment of tax by the supplier in cash or through ITC. That is the most controversial one. As far as part A, B, and C are concerned, that is very much within the control of the recipient. As far as part D is concerned, that depends on the discipline and honesty of the supplier concerned. Without that, it would be very difficult to claim the ITC. Now, details of each invoice and debit note shall be maintained and produced on demand. Only because at present the GSTR2 is not activated. That's why we should not, as a professional, come under the pressure of our clients, saying that detailed register is not ready, so you take some reasonable amount as ITC. That should not happen, though GSTR2 is not yet activated. That's why, if not today, tomorrow you will be required to produce this. That's why we should be very careful while claiming ITC. Now the most controversial one is how to ascertain the payment of tax by supplier in cash or through ITC. This term is dangerous because here the terminology used is that the tax must have been actually paid into government treasury compared to VAT. Here some amendment has been made in the wording because the supplier has to make that payment in cash or by adjustment by way of ITC. Friends, kindly look into this aspect, that under the MVAT Act as well as under the GST Act, though the wording used is that you will not be in a position to claim ITC more than whatever has been paid into government treasury. If the authorities take that one as a literal meaning thereof, it would be a great difficulty. But we are fortunate that the authorities under both the acts are satisfied of supplier has paid the tax when Annexure J1 under the old act and GSTR 1 under the new act has been filed by the supplier. They are taking it as tax has been actually paid. So little sign of relief in this. Otherwise, in a case where supplier's ITC is disallowed under section 48(5) of the MVAT Act or under section 16(2)(c) of the CGST Act, would have made literally our life miserable. When we will go and discuss about how to ascertain transaction wise whether the tax has been paid by the supplier or not, what tools the authorities are using to ascertain this. At that time, you will come to know why I am saying that there is a little relief that at least upon filing GSTR 1, the authorities are taking for granted that the supplier must have paid the tax on it. Now, how to ascertain this? We are on that point. Download 2A of supplier and match with ITC register, that everyone knows. In case of matched, take full ITC. In case of mismatched, Rule 36(4) provides to claim additional 20 or 10% of matched ITC. This Rule 36(4) amended after the notification. I have wrongly mentioned only one notification, but there is thereafter December, dated December as well. So accordingly, you make a change. Of course, the December notification is only to raise that limit from, or rather reduce that limit from 20% to 10%. Otherwise, there is no difference. 36(4) now has been introduced. Now that Rule 36(4) reads like this: input tax credit to be availed by a registered person in respect of invoices or debit notes, the details of which have not been uploaded by the supplier. In short, what this rule says simply that you look upon whatever the GSTR 1, these transactions which are showed over there. If these are shown to the extent of say 60% of the total, obviously 40% are unmatched. Still, this rule facilitates you to take 10% of the one which are matched. So 60% plus 6 rupees, I can say 10% means. So 66 rupees you take. Now on this background, the commissioner has issued, Commissioner of GST, Principal Commissioner, has issued this circular clarifying sub rule 4. The queries which are being raised are that section 43A, which prima facie has subsection 4 thereof, which actually provides the grant of additional ITC in case of unmatched, of course to the extent of 10% of which is matched. So the doubt is being raised, as the section 43A is not yet brought into force, under what provision the Rule 36(4) has been introduced, rather sub rule 4, and whether such introduction of Rule 4 is valid according to law, because there is a well-known golden rule that the rule cannot be prescribed unless there is a provision in the act, in a particular enactment. In the present issue which has been raised is that 43A is not brought into effect and how this rule has been effected. But to my mind, that is not correct. The reason is Rule 36 has been prescribed much earlier to provide for documentary requirements and conditions for claiming ITC. Now the power to prescribe the aforesaid entire rule 36, not only sub-rule 4, is derived from section 16.2, which basically talks about availment of set off. Then section 37, which talks about outward transactions, and 38 about inward transactions. Therefore, Rule 43A commences with the words, notwithstanding anything contained in section 16.2, 37 or 38. In view of the above, it cannot be said that this sub-rule has been brought into force only because of the power gained from section 43A. That power is basically coming from section 16.2, 37 and 38. That apart. But we must know that section 43A, which is not yet brought into force, that is for why that is basically enacted, though not brought in force. That section 43A lay down that the procedure for furnishing returns and availing ITC. It is only procedural section how the ITC can be claimed. Kindly take into account it is not for grant of ITC. Whether you as a recipient you are entitled for ITC or not, that will be governed by all these sections given in the second bullet from section 16 to 21. 16 mainly talks about when you will get the ITC. Now, that is why we need to understand that not only section 43A, but section 41 and 42 as well are of much importance because it specifies the procedure under which cross-matching can be done and the ITC can be granted, or it can be said that you can successfully avail this ITC. Now, section 43A, subsection 1 starts with notwithstanding anything contained in section 16.2, 37 or 38, every registered person shall, in the returns furnished under section 39.1, verify, validate, modify or delete the details of supplies furnished by the suppliers. According to me, this is the first reason why 43A has not brought into force. Because when you will validate those transactions, when initially there is a provision to upload GSTR2, that is not there. Then if the supplier shows something else, which was required to be shown but not shown, that you have to validate or modify or delete. But as that 2 is not introduced, there is no question of validation. Now this one. The procedures, see the second bullet. The procedure for availing ITC by the recipient and verification thereof shall be such as may be prescribed. That procedure as on today is not prescribed. They are trying to, I am saying, after going all these sections, they are trying to evolve a procedure, and that's why day in, day out, there are various press notes and amendment to the respective rules. How we would ascertain that the tax on the corresponding transaction has been paid or whether the ITC claimed by the recipient is correct or not. This is nothing but the procedure how the supplier will upload his transactions in GSTR1, but the second bullet is important. For the purpose of availing ITC by the recipient shall be such as may be prescribed. Now here, 43A4, as I said initially, you can see this carefully, that the procedure for availing ITC in respect of outward supply is not furnished under subsection 3, though it is the duty of the supplier, shall be such as may be prescribed, and such procedure may include the maximum amount of the ITC which can be so availed, not exceeding 20/10 later on % of the ITC on the basis of details furnished by the suppliers under said subsection. Now friends, basically this 36(4), is it a donation granted to you? That even though some of the transactions are not matched, you add 10% and take that ITC. When the law provides that is, unless the supplier upload all the transactions, you cannot. Then why this 36(4) has been introduced? That's why I use the terminology that whether it is a donation given to you. Now, please see this. Section 43A, subsection 6. The supplier and the recipient shall be jointly and severally liable to pay tax or to pay ITC added. That means if the supplier fails, the recipient should pay. That is the rule, which is unfortunately not a correct rule, and that is our concern. In relation to outward supplies for which details have been furnished under subsection 3 or subsection 4, but the return thereof has not been furnished. Kindly take into account that we come across a case whereby the suppliers are filling up and uploading GSTR1. They are showing all those transactions, but they are not filing the return in form 3B. Why? There may be a reason that they do not have the money to pay, even after deducting set off. So at least that may be a good thing for us, that is for the recipient, that they are uploading GSTR1 showing all those transactions. But kindly read the last bullet, but return thereof has not been furnished. Now, in such situation, what will happen? You will be definitely come in the clutch of the supplier has not paid the tax on the corresponding sale, and that is the one which is provided under subsection 6. Now, for the purpose of subsection 6, the recovery shall be made in such manner as may be prescribed. As on today, how to make that recovery from the recipient? Nothing is final. Only trial and error. That's why all these notices we receive for the mismatch. We will go on that topic little later. Such procedure may provide for non-recovery of an amount up to the extent of 1,000. If that mismatch is up to the tax element of 1,000 rupees ITC, then that at the most they are ready to forgo. That is about 43A7. Here, the obligation on the seller, apart from paying everything on time, means on the next 20th. But this section provides that after getting the registration, within 6 months, must, it is for him. Who has defaulted in payment of tax, and where such default has continued for more than 2 months from the due date of payment of such defaulted amount, shall be as may be prescribed. So those rules are yet to come. Under this background, the question is why Rule 36(4) permits additional ITC at 10% over matched amount. That is our, in reality, a concern. To my mind, qua this at least, the administrators of GST are honest. Why this concession? Because they say they knew that GSTR2, that module is not ready with them, and that is why it cannot be cross-matched with the supplier who is filing GSTR1. So they are optimistic that because there is no cross-check, today some of the suppliers may be taking a chance that why to upload that GSTR1, they can skip some of the transactions. All the way you have seen that it will be recorded from the purchaser. But by making some force on them, either by the recipient or by the government, the supplier may, if not today, then tomorrow, would upload GSTR1. And that is why they say, while filing any return under Form 3B, you look to the match one at 10%, but lastly, that should not happen, that ultimately you will claim more than what is available. That's why the last rider, which has been there, that it should not exceed whatever is available, means you can avail. Now, as far as the effective date of sub-rule 4 of Rule 36. Now here, as I said, it was originally introduced from 9/10/2019, and later on, it was at that time it was 20%, and now in January, means December end, the effective date has been made to 1st January 2020. Now the question is how to work out that 10% of the uploaded one. Whether, kindly see that second bullet, whether for transactions on or after 9/10/2019, here you add even the transactions from 1/1/20 also, because you have to see after conclusion whether 20% till that rule was amended and that was reduced to 10%, or for transactions claimed in GSTR 3B of any tax period uploaded on or after 9/10/2019. The second bullet, I mean, personally, I am of the opinion that when anyone is filing his GSTR 3B, before that he should see the latest, that 2A, that day in day out is like a breaking news for every return filer under 3B, that yesterday if you downloaded it, it is not showing that particular supplier has uploaded GSTR1, but if you today upload it, it is giving some different result. And that's why I am of the firm opinion that the notification may be effective from a particular date. Notification may be saying that this rule is coming into effect from so and so date, earlier 9/10/19 and now 1/1/2020. But I am of the opinion that whatever the return I am filing today, that may be a return which is in time for the last month, as today I am before 20th of this month, or any return which was not filed by me earlier, say before 6 months. Last 6 returns were not filed by me, but I am filing it today. As a prudent recipient, what I should do, I will download today's 2A, and from that I will see and apply to this 10% rule to that, and irrespective of going into or from that what date that notification has come into effect. Now this is the question before you, whether this restriction of 10% is to be calculated supplier wise or on consolidated basis. Though the circular clarifies that it is not supplier wise, it is consolidated, means my total availment which I am claiming in particular 3B is say 1 lakh rupees. Commissioner says if 60,000 are matched, you claim 66,000. That is simply the rule 36(4). But I am saying only because the commissioner says that if I claim it, but I know when I am looking to 2A downloaded, when I know that particular supplier has not uploaded anything, why should I apply consolidated amount to that consolidated amount? It should not be. If I want to follow this rule, basically section 16(2)(c), that the supplier is not showing, I will not claim this at all. Then in that case, even as far as my opinion is concerned, I would say that I would see supplier wise, not only because the commissioner is saying. Of course, tomorrow commissioner cannot levy the penalty on me if I am guided by his guidance, by way of commissioner, his circular, that you take consolidated. Because according to your circular I acted, and later on he cannot retract. That is the golden rule upheld by the Supreme Court once the clarification is issued. And if the taxpayer depends on that, if any liability coming on it, that cannot be on his head, so he will not be liable to pay at least interest. Now the mute question before all of us. Unmatched ITC to be forgotten forever or not? I believe, as I stated in the beginning, my second assumption, that only because the supplier is not paying the tax, now you have to decide whether you want to follow and observe section 16(2)(c), which says that if the supplier don't pay, you pay. If you want to follow that rule, then obviously you go as per Commissioner Circular and section 16(2)(c). But if your client, who is a genuine recipient, and of course supported by your efforts, if you want to still agitate, what you should do, that we have to find out. That no, so long as my transactions are genuine, I have uploaded, I have shown only those transactions in 3B, I will fight unto the last. Then what you should do, the recipient at the first instance should take efforts to convince the supplier to upload or amend GSTR 1. Now the second one is, there are certain circumstances, either the technical glitch or legal bar. What that legal bar can be, that after 30th September, which is the date given, or the annual return, whichever is less, etc., etc. After that, one cannot claim the ITC, or there are certain bars provided whereby any return also cannot be filed. As on today, at least, GSTR 1 is permitted to be filed with or without late fee whenever the dates are being extended and the portal is not getting closed for filing GSTR 1. So far so good. The supplier, if filed GSTR 1, you have gained. But the one which I have shown in this bullet, which is the earlier one, I brought it again. To prove your genuineness, you try to obtain a confirmation from the suppliers that all these transactions have been accounted by me and have been shown in the return filed in form 3B. If it is not filed for the technical glitch or legal bar, then take the assurance from him that he has paid that amount of tax after adjusting his ITC, whatever was available to him, to prove the genuineness of your transaction that the supplier has paid. And thereafter, this claim we should raise before the jurisdictional authorities, or as the case may be, before the courts. But while doing this, it could be better that to understand basically the provisions which basically are concerned with section 16 and the cross-check mechanism which has been provided from section 41 onwards, 41 and 42. And especially, as I mentioned lastly, the cross-check mechanism, whatever they have followed. Now this is the controversial section. The tax charge in respect of such supply has been actually paid to the government either in cash or through utilization of ITC admissible in respect of the said supply. Now friends, the question comes that you are confident that your input transactions are genuine. That may be GST, that may be earlier section 48(5), that is NVAT Act. Now the question is, I am not putting before you, not going to put before you the validity of section 16(2)(c) or the earlier one, section 48(5), because that is already upheld by the Bombay High Court and later on by the Supreme Court. Yes, so long as government has not received the money of tax into government treasury, no set-off under any circumstance would be granted. So here we are not to challenge what has been enacted by section 16(2)(c). What we want to adhere to, that in order to see that the tax is not actually paid into government treasury in cash or through adjustment of set-off by my supplier, the onus, see the last bullet, is on proper officer to prove the failure of supplier instead of directing the recipient to prove. Now see this case. What the department is canvassing, that the moment your transaction is not shown in say GSTR 1 or earlier J1, immediately tax becomes payable and you pay it. It is your duty to pay because that is upheld by Supreme Court now. Mahalakshmi is upheld by Supreme Court. And that is why I am putting before you this judgment for the simple reason that the tax is not actually paid into government treasury. Is it established? Who will establish? It is the duty of the proper officer concerned to establish that, look, qua this purchase transaction, the supplier has not actually paid the tax into government treasury. And when the issue before the Bombay High Court was in this case, that was the case under section 42(3) of the BST era, where from this historical event started. And therefore, what was happened, the tribunal said that once the set-off has been claimed and the tax invoice and all other things are produced, then the set-off shall be granted. It was accordingly allowed. But the court held, short lines, better you read this. The court rejected the sales tax reference application filed by the department because the tribunal held in favor of the claimant, as well as see the last one, the amount of drawback, set-off or refund shall not exceed the amount of tax in respect of the same goods paid, if any, into government treasury, and therefore the order passed by the tribunal needs to be set aside, particularly when there was no dispute that the amount of tax was not paid into government treasury by the supplier. Now here in para 9 of the said judgment, court observed, however, we clarify that we have not examined any wider question or controversy, particularly with regard to the applicability of section 42(3) of the BST Act as it then stood and as it stands now. In an appropriate case, this court may decide as to whether there is difference in the language of the unamended and amended provision. And secondly, whether the mandate of the section is that the amount of refund shall not exceed the respect of the same amount. You have seen the earlier statement as well, the last one, that we are keeping this controversy open. That has been said by the Supreme Court, High Court of Bombay. Why? Because here what is happening, our own misconception is that once it is not uploaded by the supplier in GSTR 1, it is finished. It is not. Because the question of, or rather the fact of, having not paid the amount by the supplier, that is not settled by the Bombay High Court in Mahalakshmi's case. Because here how to invoke that section, that is very important. How to invoke and that section by saying that it is not actually paid. That's why I read the last sentence. We are keeping open this controversy for being decided in an appropriate case. And that's why when they say that in Mahalakshmi everything is finished, it is not. That's why I brought before you this judgment, apart from some of the other steps which I am going to put before you. Now, as far as section 41 is concerned, the ITC claimed in 43 3B is self-assessment, whatever you are claiming, and that is being credited to your electronic credit ledger on a provisional basis. That section 41 says. Now coming to section 42(1), matching, reversal and reclaim of ITC. Kindly look to this. The details of every inward supply. You have experienced what is going on today. They are showing to you the dealer-wise transactions. It is not. The word every inward supply means bills is very important. Furnished by recipient for a tax period shall be matched. I have mentioned in the bracket by whom. They are saying you match. Yes, it is our duty to match to avoid the problem in future, so we can convince the supplier that you file. But when we have already uploaded, we have claimed, we do not want to reverse under belief that the supplier must have paid this. If it is not paid, tomorrow he may pay. Then now, to invoke that section 16(2)(c), who has to work? That shall be matched. That's why I am saying by the officer concerned. Unless that is done, setup cannot be taken back from you. With the corresponding details of outward supply furnished by the corresponding supplier in his valid return for the same tax period or any proceeding tax period. Why these wordings? Because 43B unfortunately asks you to do so many wrong things. You include the transaction of inward or outward supply of any period, but the last limit what they have said is up to 30th September, etc., etc. And that is why I say they are matching with the current tax period or any preceding tax period. Now, tax periods really means the definition is before you, the one for which you are liable to file your return. Now, this one, now the game started. We have understood where it can be claimed. The law says once GSTR2, GSTR1 has been uploaded, once you have claimed in 3B, it will be credited to your ledger. Now the issue is, now because of section 42, which I have shown to you earlier, rightly or wrongly, they have made the exercise of cross-matching the transactions. But kindly take into account that as GSTR2 is not yet introduced, they cannot do this cross-match, and that's why in the earlier slide, I have insisted upon the word each. They have to prove each transaction. They cannot say in lump sum. And that is why this query has been drafted, for which we have started receiving this such notices. Now, whether the such notices are to be added to, that is the question in front of you. Now see the last bullet. As there is no GSTR2 came into picture, they are simply showing that in 3B you have claimed the ITC of say 10 lakh rupees, and all your suppliers where our team has been incorporated by them in GSTR1, they are showing in total 8 lakh rupees. That's why 2 lakh rupees ITC you have claimed in excess, so you pay that. Why they are doing this? Because there is no GSTR2, so they cannot issue the notice to the supplier concerned that you have not paid the tax on this particular transaction, and that is why I am saying, see this first one, as the onus to prove non-payment of tax on each outward supply is on a proper officer. This is not my opinion. This has been shown to you in the earlier sections, whatever I am sure I have stated. As the onus is on them, said notices are invalid being on summary basis. It is not replied or complied. He cannot pass the transaction wise order to disallow the ITC. Summarily, he can keep on pressing that there is a mismatch, tomorrow you will find. And recently the circular which is issued to restrict adjusting or debiting that ITC which is to your credit ledger. That I will come to that later on. But if you do not comply with that notice, he cannot pass the transaction wise order. He may do anything, but transaction wise definitely which he cannot, and that would be illegal. At the most, he can select the case for scrutiny of all input transactions. And that is why in some of the cases, we have received the notice under section 65, which is for audit by the department. So lastly, how to reply to such notices? Is that best way you write to them that I am not aware which are the transactions which are not shown by the supplier in the GSTR 1. He may say that you know that you have a backup of GSTR 2, which otherwise you will file tomorrow. So you compare it. That we would say that he might have paid tax, even though in GSTR 1 no such entries have been made, maybe because of inadvertence or a clerical error on his part. Yes, that is why. There are so many issues you can find for this mismatching. That in between, if there is a change in constitution of recipient's business, he keep on writing the number of the old business and not the new one. This is also one of the reasons. That's why we should not bend upon them when they make the cross matching on summary basis. We have to lastly tell them that to ask details of each transaction on which suppliers have failed to pay tax, because that is their duty. I have already pointed out to you. There is a base why I am saying this, apart from whatever I said from the basis of sections, not from my opinion. And today, whenever we are facing this mismatching issue under the VAT era or GST, either before the assessing officer or the first appellate authority or tribunal and thereafter before the High Court, we are on this wording itself, that the non-payment of the tax by the supplier must be proved transaction wise, and that is why this judgment in front of you. I will not take your time in reading this, because that is already circulated. You can go through. But what this judgment says, that the ITC shall be disallowed or other allowed as well, qua each transaction on which you have claimed that ITC. And that is why kindly take into account as far as old annexure J1 and J2 are concerned, which are on summary basis. Today's notices are also being issued on summary basis. So we should not bend upon, because of the second assumption I have stated to you in the beginning. We do not want to surrender, because we are here to work for our genuine recipient client. And that is why this ST and Company judgment would be a great support to all of us. Now, why the assessing authorities are doing this? Because they want always to keep a pressure on you that tomorrow you will be penalized, you will be prosecuted for claiming the ITC which is not actually matching with the supplier's GSTR 1, etc. And that is why such notices are being issued. And surprisingly, when I went through the provisions under the GST Act, CGST Act, there is no provision for exhaustive assessment. What we call it as exhaustive assessment, like our section 23.2 or 23.3, whereby the notice is that you produce all your books of accounts. And from that, they will assess and tell you where you are wrong. The order will be passed. But here I have not found even a single section which says that you are called upon as to why you should not be assessed comprehensively. There is no such section as such. No. Now see this section 42.2. That is very important. The claim of ITC matched with details of corresponding outward supply shall be communicated to recipient. Today what is happening? The cross verification done by them is also not neither return wise, not a particular financial year wise. So there is no finality. आज का 2A देखो and then get relief. नहीं होता है 10% additional claim करो. But you do not know from match when you will go to mismatch. And that is why this provision, read it carefully. The claim of ITC match also with the corresponding outward supply shall be communicated to recipient. Are they doing this? They are telling you to match and say, have a sign of relief. That 2A shows that the transaction is reflected, but it is their duty to say that it is matched. Now, on that count, see this issue. It is mandatory to proper officer to communicate such details to recipient. Now here, similar provision is also there in case of section 42.3 discussed hereinafter. Like 42.2, which I have showed to you, that even in case of matched, they have to inform to the recipient that it is matched. But where there is excess, in that case, see the last few words. That discrepancy shall be communicated to both such persons. They are not doing. They are informing only to recipients, not to the supplier concerned. Now again this issue. Here, as they are not communicating to your supplier, there is no threat to your supplier that I must file the concerned return and pay the tax. And that is why what we need to do. As I said, always keep on writing to the officer concerned, which I am doing. When there were no nodal officers till 2000 December 15, I used to write to the Commissioner of Sales Tax that your appointment has been made to carry out all the purposes of the Act, that is section 10.1 and 10.4. There is no nodal officer in charge of my case as well as the in charge of my supplier's case. Now you are the commissioner and you have too many delegates. So now this application is being filed, which I used to write, and today I am doing that. That my nodal officer or certain officer has sent me a notice that my suppliers have not paid the taxes, and because your appointment has been made to carry out all the purposes of the Act, not only to invoke section 48.5 or now 16.2c, and that is why at that time I used to say that you appoint any officer to invoke section 6.1, which is a charging section under VAT, and presently section 9.1 against my suppliers, then only they can pay this. Why I am doing this? For that I will come little later. That when I take the effort to tell even the commissioner, and from 2016 onwards and now under GST, as there is a proper officer allotted to my suppliers as well. So now only by changing the language of that letter, I am filing such letter to the nodal officers, now proper officer, of all my suppliers, stating these are the mismatches, and therefore it seems that the supplier has not paid the tax or not shown in GSTR 1. So you take the action against them before the time for their assessment gets time barred. Mark these words. In time, that is very important. And on this count, even I have filed few writ petitions. Thereby, even though my appeal is pending down below before the first appellate authority or tribunal, I have filed some of the writ petitions saying I am not before the High Court for claiming the set off. That the commissioner would even grant me whenever my supplier will pay that, or the tribunal will grant. But I am before you that unless this High Court directs, the commissioner or his subordinate officers will not take any action against my supplier, and that is why the High Court's door has been knocked to direct the Commissioner of Sales Tax, and if he failed to do that, because there are some cases where I have filed these writ petitions, that the assessment period for those suppliers has become time barred. And therefore, this application or other, I'm sorry, here the writ petition, whichever I have filed, that I have filed in detail little later, that whenever there is a failure of the commissioner and his subordinate officers in invoking the charging sections and all other sections of recovery, in those cases, the ITC of the corresponding purchaser recipient cannot be disallowed. That is supported by case law. I want to come to that little later. Now, this is section 42(4). This is about duplication claims of ITC. Nothing wrong. I have punched one invoice twice. So obviously I will have to reverse that. Now section 42(5). Even take up a case that you have informed to your supplier that you have not uploaded your GSTR 1. And in spite of that, section 42(5) says the amount which is not rectified by the supplier in his valid return for the month in which discrepancy is communicated shall be added to the output tax liability of the recipient. They are directly jumping to add the liability to the recipient in his return for the succeeding month in which the discrepancy is communicated. That's why again this query, partly I have explained already to you that directly they are jumping to the purchaser whether they can do, when there is a section 9(1) which I have already have narrated, which is reproduced over here in short while answering this query, whether the commissioner can do that. Now see this section 9(1). Subject to provisions of subsection 2, there shall be levied a tax called CGST on all intrastate supplies of goods or services or both. Now what the terminology is, there shall be levied a tax on all intrastate supplies, as you are aware, barring reverse charge mechanism. Tax is payable on sale, outward supply. Then the section says what? Tax shall be levied. Who shall levy? If the supplier himself doesn't levy and pay, it is commissioner's duty to levy, not the recipient's levy. And that's why the charging section, if you are not invoking that section against my supplier, then the next contention which would come after some time, That's why this background. Section 3, again, why the commissioner is appointed. Section 5, powers of the officer concerned, which they are not implementing. Now here, section 42(7) is nothing great. That whenever supplier declares in his GSTR 1 the left out transactions by way of debit notes or invoice, at that time, whatever was reversed by me as output tax liability, that can be taken back. That simply this subsection 42(7) says. Now this section 39(9), you know that this is about filing of returns and the last day for which has been prescribed for filing that returns. But here the important part is that once the return is filed, and if you notice some discrepancy therein, he shall rectify such omission in such form and manner as may be prescribed, subject to payment of interest, provided that, we should harp upon or rather carefully see this, provided that no such rectification shall be allowed after the due date for furnishing of return for the month of September or second quarter following the end of financial year or the actual date of furnishing of relevant annual return whichever is earlier. Now we are talking about rule 36(4). I would say, or rather said at the beginning, in a way that is a beneficial rule. At least it grants me something. You add 10% even though not matched. But as far as section 16(2)(c) is concerned, that is directly coming to me. And all other rules of matching which I have put before you, they are simply saying the moment it is established that supplier has not admitted those transactions, ITC should be reversed and that tax element shall be paid as if it is output tax of the recipient. And here, this prohibition is that after certain period, that is 30th September, we roughly say, that any rectification or even filing of a returns are barred. Now the question is that when I as a recipient kept silent because I am helpless, I took all those efforts which I have informed to you earlier. And thereupon, you are coming back to section 16(2)(c) to invoke against the purchaser by barring even the filing of those returns, come what may. The other provision is that what they say, in addition to prohibition of such filing, rectification by the supplier, etc. What they say, if any tax along with interest has been recovered from the supplier because of departmental audit or investigation under section 73 or section 74 by way of fraud, in the sense his intention was not to pay, but because we visited and that's why he is paying, still they say such ITC cannot be claimed. Where from this provision came? This can't be. 16(2)(c) simply says if it is not paid, no ITC to purchaser. And you are prohibiting such supplier not to file the return, not to rectify anything after a certain date. And therefore this issue has been drafted, whether this prohibition on the claim of ITC, the second one I have stated, when it is recovered from him under section 73, even because no e-way bill was prepared by him, then also they say that ITC cannot be claimed. Now friends, here when this last query has been drafted, that such prohibitions, whether these are valid. Qua that in the circulars, I'm sorry, the notes which are in front of you, I have given to you that whenever there is a commissioner's failure to invoke all the possible actions against the suppliers, there are judgments, not only of Delhi High Court in the RIGDA, etc. They are fully protecting the genuine purchasers. But there is a judgment of UK court, which I am citing in the writ petitions which are filed. And whenever the final hearings are taking place at the tribunal, that when I have approached to the Commissioner of Sales Tax and all his delegates to recover the tax from the suppliers if it is not paid. First of all, it must be established. Secondly, when they have not acted against the suppliers, then I have quoted, I have relied on that judgment, which I have not given in these notes, of the UK court, whereby it is very clearly stated, rather held, that when such non-payment by the suppliers is because of failure of the administrators, then that revenue loss cannot be recovered from the genuine recipient, but that shall be borne by the respective government. That is the decision thereon. And that is why the notes which are in front of you, I have tried to make the attempts which we should take when we decide to agitate that when my transaction is genuine only because in the case of Mahalakshmi such section has been upheld. The simple reason is, in case of Mahalakshmi, that provision has been held as valid on the simple reason that no money is received in the government treasury, wherefrom we will give you the set off. But if you read that entire judgment, you will find nowhere, not even a comment in that judgment as a passing observation regarding invoking of that section. What is that invoking? Last but not the least, is to establish by whom? Again by the nodal officer or proper officer, that the tax is actually not paid qua that transactions. And after all these have been put before you, I don't think, as far as the efforts to be taken are concerned, or I have anywhere not said that the judgment in Mahalakshmi is not proper. That is a valid judgment. So now, if we want to really knock the door for justice of any court, then unless, that is my view, that unless we take all the efforts, catch hold of the commissioner and his delegates, when in writing recently before the president bench over here at the tribunal, when I put it, my written submissions in writing, and one of the para says that the action shall be taken against the commissioner and all those who are responsible for not taking action against the suppliers, the cost also should be levied on them. Very next day, I came across two joint commissioners saying, Mr. Bapat, kindly withdraw that, do not be so much aggressive. Why I am saying this before you, that only by quoting that in Mahalakshmi they have given an affidavit that we shall make, and again in the bracket there is as far as possible, all the efforts against the suppliers I am not at all relying on that affidavit. Why? Because when there is a charging section that I have put before you, when there is a section as far as the commissioner duties and powers are concerned, and when I am in a position to establish that those powers are not utilized, why should I rely on that affidavit? With this, friends, I stop it over here for any queries to be raised by you. Thank you very much for the patience.